Hello, 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 everybody. We are back. Hey, our guest is on the dot. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mentor Show. It's the Mentor Show. Oh, our guest is here. Wow. You're welcome. Let me do my intro.
Strap yourself in.
Welcome.
We're set up, switched on, and ready to go.
Hello, welcome. I'm Dr. Olushola Ajide, your host on the Mentors Show, where we inspire you, help you reinvent yourself, and make a positive impact in your community, in your country, and on your continent. We mentor people across Africa. We bring you guests with inspiring life stories who are themselves transformation agents, making a positive change in their profession and nations. Subscribe to the African Coaching and Mentorship Initiative YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome. I'm trying to set up my setup is okay, great. All right, cool. Welcome. Yeah, we are set and good to go. I said my guest tonight, let me coming on the show right on time. Drum roll. Give a drum roll to our guest tonight. Is enough of drum roll. You're welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Mentors Show. On the Mentors Show, I'm your host, Dr. Olushola Ajide, and you know how it is on this show. On this show, we inspire you. On this show, we help you reinvent yourself and break down every limiting belief of what you can achieve and what you can attain, even on earth. And also, we help you, give you ideas of how you can make a positive impact in your community, in your country, and on your continent. And we'll bring you guests who are phenomenal people who are doing exactly that, making positive impact in their community, country, and on the continent. And tonight, we are privileged to have in our midst, on the show tonight, the mathematical wizard, if you would like to use that word, himself. Let me, okay, yeah, cool. All right. So we have tonight on the show Dr. Nira Chamberlain, who has 2 doctorates in mathematics, that is 2 PhDs in mathematics, and is listed as the Power Lists of 2022 top 100 most influential black person in the UK. In actual fact, he's been on that list 5th year consecutively in a row. He's part of the top 100 most influential BAME, that's Black and Asian minority ethnic leaders in the UK, and is part of, sits on the board of some of these kind of organizations. He was awarded an honorary doctorate degree because of his prowess and how he has used mathematics to solve life issues. Dr. Nira is a winner of the Big Math Off title, the world's most interesting mathematician. Interesting. Dr. Nira is also listed as by the Science Council as one of the UK's top 100 scientists. And in 2015, he joined the elite lists of distinguished mathematicians who featured in the biographical references book of who is who when it comes to the issue of mathematics. Dr. Nira Chamberlain is the president of the Institute of Mathematics and its application, and is a visiting fellow of Loughborough University Mathematical Science Department. Dr. Nira Chamberlain is one of the few British mathematicians to feature in the Encyclopedia of Mathematics and Society. The encyclopedia highlights two of Nira's mathematical models and their impact on the field of naval engineering. It's not finished. Wait for it. It's still coming. Nira has over 25 years of writing mathematical models, simulations, algorithms that solve complex industrial problems. He also developed mathematical solutions within industries such as the defense, aerospace, automobile, energy sectors. Wow. I can just go on, and by the time I finish, it will be already 1 hour. So welcome to Mentorship, Dr. Nira Chamberlain. Welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, we can.
Excellent. I'm new to this technology, so there you go. Something new this week. I've learned something from you. Thank you very much indeed.
Oh, well, it's one of those things. You know how it is. For those of you who are mathematicians, that when you draw two lines, when they meet together, so somehow the two lines, my line and your line, is meeting together. So it's actually a privilege also having you on the Mentor Show. It's a privilege having you on the show. All right, I think, like, you know, it's just to get to know you. That's what the Mentor Show is about. And like you had in the intro, quite some of our people who are on the show tonight is just for them to be able to know that they can achieve whatever they want to achieve. That's just the premise of whatever it is. So let's go for it. Who is Dr. Nira Chamberlain?
Okay, who is Dr. Nira or Dr. Nira Chamberlain? I'm a mathematician.
Okay.
And my field in mathematics is mathematical modelling. I like to look at real life problems, turn it into mathematics, solve it, and apply it back into the real world. But not only am I, let's say, a professional mathematician, a professional mathematical modeler, I wear other hats as well. I'm also a mathematics communicator. I do a lot of going into schools and going to theatres and talking about mathematics. I support a number of charities talking about mathematics. And I'm also currently, I am the president of the Institute of Mathematics and its Application, which is one of the UK's learned societies in mathematics. So that is very much me. I'm very much, into mathematics.
Interesting. Wow. So it could be said that you sleep, you wake, you dream, you drink, you eat mathematics, isn't it?
Unless I'm taking a break, most of the time.
Interesting. So, but it's quite fascinating that you have this kind of interest in mathematics. It's one of the things. It's one of the hard nuts that makes most of us turns most people off. Maybe myself, one of the people. Even though I passed my mathematics in school, just with the skin of the teeth, I had to go and do a remedial to make up with my whole level. So, but how did it come about? How did you come to be so fascinated with mathematics?
Well, I think when I was about, let's say, 8,
Okay.
Most of my friends were was into, let's say, Spider-Man, Superman, Batman.
Okay.
With me, I like getting the calculators and pressing the buttons until they flash at me. So I like, my calculators was my toys, yeah. And as I was growing older, when I was around, say, 9, 10, I used to have my parents gave me private mathematical lessons. I did that with my sister, and I think it was the time when I finished my problem, the teacher would give me the problems that my sister was doing. So I was doing mathematics 3 years ahead of my time, and I just thought, this is just interesting. But the key thing is, when I was around about 15, the career teacher at school, he goes around to each one of the pupils to ask them what they want to be and give them advice to tell them what's the next step they should do. So when it came to my turn, he asked me what would I like to be, and I said, I wouldn't mind doing something that would involve mathematics and logic. At the time, I didn't realise that you could be a mathematician. And he said this to me. He said that, well, he said, well, given your jawline, you should really become a boxer. I said, a boxer? And he said, yes, you should become a boxer. So, at that age, you put your teachers at that level, higher. And then I went home. When I went home, I told my parents, told them that the teacher wanted me to become a boxer. My dad said this to me, and it was an important lesson. He said, Nara, you don't need anybody's permission to be a great mathematician. I said, well, I'll repeat again, you don't need anybody's permission to be a great mathematician. Now, even at the time, I only half believed what my dad
What he said.
Yeah, I decided just to take it on board, and then I decided, do what was my exams at 16 was about GCSEs, did my A levels, went off to do a degree, went off to do a master's, and then I went out into industry.
Wow, interesting. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I think as you're watching, if you're watching live or you're watching this replay of this session, and I think that's what our guest tonight has told us is very poignant and very important. The fact that whatever your dreams are, they are valid, and you don't need anybody's permission to achieve that. If you, whatever, no matter the current age now, whatever you decide to do, you don't need anybody's permission. You just go for it because you don't need anybody's permission. I remember I was talking to someone, and I told them I was trying to help this lady who is from a very conservative maybe Asian background, and she was thinking, I'm old, my children, I'm a grandmother. And I told her, I said, see, you can achieve and become anything if only you believe that you can achieve it. So I took her to watch YouTube to look at some men and elderly people who were in their 80s and decided to become world champions. Can you imagine that? Somebody who already is in their 80s, you would think somebody who is already in the 80s is already thinking to pack up and die. But somebody who is in their 80s, they were deciding that they want to become world champions. And surprisingly, they achieved it. They achieved it at age 80. So if you're on this call tonight, whatever your desire, whatever your expectation, whatever you dream about, even if it was a dream you had when you are a young child, please, it can come to reality. Don't allow anybody, you don't need anybody's permission to achieve and to attain those goals. Just know what is the price you need to pay the price, and voila, you see yourself achieving and working in that direction. Interesting. Now take us to, now you've given us a dimension of your father. Your father had that mind of telling you that, hey, you don't need anybody's permission. And perhaps that is the kind of mindset he had to be, that he put into you and was telling you, this is what you want to be. So, but at that age, that age of, at least before the age of 15, at the age of 9, 10, who were your heroes?
Okay, well, so, really and truly, back then, my heroes were mathematical, because I didn't know any black mathematicians, yeah?
Okay.
I didn't even know that there were black mathematicians, yeah? And it was not until probably when I was in my late 20s, it actually came across other black mathematicians. So really and truly, my heroes tend to be, let's say, sports stars and musicians. So, my spies, like Muhammad Ali, like a butterfly, stinging like a bee. That was my hero. But no, it wasn't until very much later did I realise that, wait a minute, there are black mathematicians, and when you hear the film like Hidden Figures, yes, there are more hidden figures and the more black mathematicians out there. So it wasn't, like I said, very much later on until I learnt about black heroes of mathematics.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, our audience, somebody says time is nothing when you have a dream. Time is nothing, that's true. That's Dr. Dorothy Bassi, one of my mentors. And Sylvia says no age limit in learning or making great impact. So there's no age limit. Once you desire to make impact, you can still make impact. Interesting. So now, if you look at that age of 15, and now the teacher was trying to dissuade you, but you made up your mind. How did you pull through? Even though you didn't believe your father, how did you pull through?
Okay, well, what happened was that even though, so my dad said this thing, you don't need anybody's permission to be a great mathematician. I went on, did, let's say, my GCSEs, my A-levels, my degree, and I did my master's. But even though I was passionate about mathematics, I was very much, my mindset was I was very much a fan of mathematics rather than a mathematician. Using an analogy of football, you imagine, let's say, somebody who likes watching football games. You go to the stadium, watch football games. You're a football fan, and you watch all of these players on the pitch and thinking, say, "Oh, I wish I could be a football player one day." But you're a fan of football, but you never imagine yourself actually being,
a footballer.
Being a footballer. With me, what I like doing is I like going to all of these different conferences and watching all of these mathematicians doing all these crazy things on the blackboard and writing all these crazy things on the whiteboard. And I was there going, "Ooh, I would like to be I wouldn't mind, like, being one of like that one day." Or I was going to the library and pick out all of these complicated math books and looking at all of these crazy mathematical formulas and thinking, "Wow, I would like to do that one day." And so I was very much a fan of football, a fan of mathematics. And then it was in one year, I went to a conference up in Scotland, and it was one of the biggest mathematical conferences to take place in Britain for the past 40 years. And I got surrounded by this group of mathematicians called the Congress of African American Research Mathematicians. They're all American, all Black Americans. And one of them said to me, he goes, he said, "Have you heard of us?" I said, "No." And they explained who they were. And then one of them said to me, he says, "Nora, somebody of your enthusiasm and your passion should do a PhD in mathematics." I said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, there are historical reasons in America why there are not that many PhD Black mathematicians. I believe it's something like, given the population of African Americans in America is about 12.5%. Of all PhDs that are awarded to African Americans, it's less than 1%. And there are historical reasons why this is the case." So they're saying, for somebody of your enthusiasm and your passion, you should go ahead and do a PhD in mathematics, break that glass ceiling. And I felt all inspired and thinking, yes. And so I went back to my home city, wrote up that application, sent it off to a university, got invited for an interview 2 weeks later. And then when I went to that interview, the professor took one look at me and says, "Nara, you are technically weak and naive if you ever think you're going to do a PhD." And I thought, oh. And so I was thinking, wait a minute, here's a professor of mathematics telling me that I cannot be a mathematician. And I felt really discouraged and really crushed. And then my parents got in contact with me and my dad says, "You don't need anybody's permission to be a great mathematician." And I said, look, Dad, out of respect, Dad, a teacher has told me that I cannot be a mathematician. A professor has told me I cannot be a mathematician. That's it. Me, mathematics is done, finished. I'm no longer doing mathematics. I'm no longer a fan of mathematics. I'm no longer doing mathematics as a hobby. That's it. I don't want to do mathematics. And really, truly, for the next couple of years, my mathematical activity went to a minimum. Yeah. So that's what happened. A couple of years later, my son, went off to infant junior school, and the teacher said to him, "What would you like to be when you grow up?" And this is my son when he was 4 years old. But 4-year-old, he says, my son says, "I'd like to be a mathematician." And then the teacher said this to him: "You will never be a mathematician, but you might grow up to become a singer." And so I went to, when my son told me what happened, I was livid. I wanted to give that teacher a piece of my mind.
Of your mind.
and then I thought, wait a minute, stop. How can I go to that school, give that teacher a piece of my mind, and say to my son, "Right, son, go for it, just go for it." And thinking about, wait a minute, what's happened to my son happened to me, a number of years back. It happened to me when I was 15. People have told me what I cannot be. And I remember what my parents, and especially what my dad said: "You don't need anybody's permission to be a great mathematician. And then from that day on, I drew a line and said, that's it. From now on, I'm going to be a mathematician. So I went on to become work as a mathematical modeling consultant, and I did a PhD, and the rest is history.
It's history. Interesting. Now, ladies and gentlemen, perhaps like our guest tonight, you had a dream, and the dream is in the cooler. And the reason why your dream is in the cooler is because you summed it up. And I think it's a challenge, particularly for those of us who are black ethnic background, in which we look at teachers and professors as God. When they speak, we take what they have said and we say, well, if they've said it, they know what they should know what they are saying. However, they are not God. And I think it took our guest tonight I think God just so loved him to make his son of 4 years old to go through the same experience, because that's a wake-up call. That was a wake-up call. If you never had that wake-up call, you could have just forgotten everything, as you said to your dad. I'm done. It's over. So the point again is this. You don't have or need anybody's permission to be whatever you want to be in life. No matter your age, just go for it. That's number one. Number two, don't also be a person that always gives negative counsel or negative advice to people when they around us, because quite a lot of people have dreams, but some of us, friends or people, we killed those dreams. You said, where are you coming from? Like the teacher told you, you can be a boxer. In other words, the stereotype is a stereotype that for you and your stature, you will fit a boxer. However, that's not the plan of God for you. God didn't want them to be boxing you. He wants you to be boxing mathematics. Your boxing is mathematics. So if people come to you for counsel, for advice, don't be the voice that will dampen, that will kill the dreams of people. Don't tell them you will never be that. People that come from where you come from, they don't attain that. People that look like you, they don't attain that. Or, don't you know the family you came from? And perhaps nobody is telling you that. Your subconscious mind is telling you that. And that's what this show is all about. To help you know that you can overcome that self-talk, that negative talk, that thing that is telling you cannot achieve that. So please go for it, whatever it is. Our guest is telling us tonight from his own life experience, go for it. You can achieve and attain whatever you want to attain. At least today, we can see him here. He's on this show because he went for his dream. He's on this show because he went for it and he became a consultant to people, to organizations, and helping to solve problems. Wow. Quite very inspirational. And I think it's important, particularly for those of us who are from black ethnic minority. I remember when I started my PhD, one of the key challenges I had initially was the issue of critiquing journal articles. You feel that a journal article has been produced by a professor or someone who has a doctorate, you feel the person has known everything. What else do I want to critique? What else do I want to do? And I think that's a cultural thing in which we do that. No, even if somebody has an idea, you must have a point of view. You must say something. You must have something to say, an opinion. Not necessarily that you disagree, but at least have an opinion on the way things are. Wow, quite very interesting. Now, take us, I know in mathematics, I know what are the areas. You can see the way you are talking about mathematical modeling. It seems there are many types of mathematics.
Okay, so for instance, what I do is so there are different areas of mathematics, so you have pure mathematics, you have applied mathematics, you have mathematics and engineering. But what I tend to do is mathematical modeling is those areas which you don't think you can actually apply mathematics, or methods, places where mathematics hasn't been established. you do is you look at that problem, you translate it into a mathematical form, then you solve it, and then you apply that solution back into the real world. So give you an example. Some company I once said, right? Somebody asked me a question: how would I stop? We have this problem about artificial intelligence and artificial intelligence takeover, and they're saying, well, is there a way of trying to minimize the probability of artificial intelligence takeover? Let's say, for instance, you have a company that is applying this advanced AI, and it's built up a monopoly, and it's become so powerful that all of a sudden it's influencing the world economy, and it's now making decisions that's not conducive to social cohesion. How can you actually stop that? How can you look at the economy and see how these companies actually competing against each other, and somehow stop this, let's say, an AI company becoming a monopoly and doing that and taking over? Now, what we do is that we can actually build a mathematical model and do like a simulation, and then have a look at and then start applying some strategies to see which strategy actually works to minimise the artificial intelligence takeover. So that is, let's say, one example of mathematical modelling that I have done. I mean, so that's probably on the high end. On another, which is probably much more, much more relatable, is like my football team is Aston Villa, and at one time they were in the Premiership and they got relegated, and they were in the Championship, and then after 10 games they only had 9 points, and people wanted to know is what was the probability of them making the playoffs, because they got rid of the manager, a new manager comes in, and they said, well, what's the probability of them making the playoffs? And what I've done is I created a mathematical model to actually predict the number of points that they would get come by the end of the season, and also I could work out what the probability of them getting into the playoffs. So then I went on to the radio station and saying, yes, and as an Aston Villa fan and as a mathematician, I can tell you the probability of Aston Villa making the playoffs was 2%. Do you know what I mean? So mathematician first, Aston Villa fan second. But there was a following season when Aston Villa was in the playoffs, and there were only about 10 games to go, and I used the same mathematical model to predict the probability of them remaining in the playoffs, and also predicted who they would play in the playoffs. So henceforth, I gave Aston Villa full warning who they would play in the playoffs, and that's who they did play in 10 games' time, and they beat them, and they got to the final, and they won the final, and so they went in the Premiership. So I used my mathematical modelling to save Aston Villa.
Interesting. Yay. Wow. It's quite fascinating, when you talk about this issue of modeling and how that could help. Now, let me maybe as a consultant, perhaps the problem we have, my research is on community engagement, corporate social responsibility, and looking at the responsibility of oil companies and their host communities, how they relate with communities. And in that research, one of the key points, which is the bane of challenge in Africa, is the issue of what we call capture, which is corruption. How can we solve corruption with mathematical modeling when the whole seems to be that the whole nation, aside from the politicians, even the people in the streets, the people, they're all having an element of allowing, abetting, and encouraging that, in which if you become a politician, a local government chairperson, which is maybe a councillor or a provost, for example, your family members will be wanting you to share the cake, wanting you to share the money from the government. So the point I'm painting is that corruption seems to be acceptable as a culture. How can mathematical modeling solve that kind of a problem?
Okay, I mean, seeing as when I was talking about the artificial intelligence takeover,
yeah,
you almost can do like a similar approach, because the artificial intelligence takeover was actually based on an application of my PhD.
Okay.
And my PhD was all about, really truly, it's about the mathematics of competition. Yeah. So let's say, for instance, what you have is that you have different players, and they've got resources, and they actually are connected to different players.
Mm-hmm.
So now, what you want to see, there is, for instance, let's say, for instance, you're talking about a community. There's a certain KPIs that you would want in that community.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you have, let's say, players, so let's say you have players who decide to be competitive rather than collaborative.
Okay.
Then what you can actually do is then from actually doing that mathematical model, you can actually measure the global economy and like a global KPI. So if you have a certain number of people who are competitive rather than collaborative in the behaviour,
yeah,
and henceforth are taking away resources and keeping it amongst themselves, you'll actually see the health of that community go down. Not that you'll see the health of that sub-community go up, but you see the health of that community go down, and then henceforth, then you have to start thinking about what strategies do you actually what do you actually do? Do you actually start cutting off your connection to those who are deemed to be competitive rather than collaborative? So the key thing is to connect to those players who are collaborative. So henceforth, the community rises, and disconnected with those who are competitive. Because the thing is, somebody that is competitive can only grow if it can take resources from those who are collaborative.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's something called the prisoner's dilemma and game theory. That's what comes to mind.
Okay. Wow. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's interesting that our guest is saying tonight, with mathematical modeling, there's nothing you cannot apply mathematical modeling is. And if you're on this show tonight and you are a fan of mathematics, it means you can take your mathematics to the next level of using mathematical modeling to solve any life problem, like he's just telling us, using mathematical modeling to solve corruption problem in Nigeria, corruption problem in Africa, for example. On the show tonight, I have one of my own mentors here, Frank Edwards. He's a singer, and some of people, and it's nice having you here, Coach, and some of the people that are here. It's great having you. Perhaps we can also use mathematics to make somebody to sing well. Correct?
The brilliant mathematics to make somebody sing well. I haven't tried it on myself as yet, and I can't sing, so I'll have to see about it.
At least looking at how to stretch that and the applicability, as it were, of that stuff. So it's quite interesting. Wow. Now, let's go to this show is hinged on sparking creativity. How would you define creativity?
I mean, creativity. Creativity. That's a good point, because people think when they talk about mathematics, they think mathematics is very mechanical, and it's right or it's wrong. That's what people's view of mathematics is. No, but there's parts of mathematics, and especially with my field, mathematical modelling, is very creative. One of the quotes from Albert Einstein that he says about mathematics is, he said that mathematics is the poetry of logical ideas. Poetry is creative, the poetry of logical ideas. And so henceforth, if I, let's say, see a problem, I have to come up with a creative way of logical ideas of actually solving it. That's why mathematics is very much an evolving and a growing and a vibrant subject. And the day I stop being creative is the time that I stop solving new problems. There are problems out there that you cannot use established mathematics to solve, but by actually looking at the logical ideas and coming and being creative and coming up, doing the poetry of the logical ideas, that's how you actually solve the problems.
Interesting. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're on this call tonight or you are watching a replay of it, the key point our guest has mentioned, I think, is very important. That he has told us that for him, he as a mathematical modeler, solving problems with models actually is creativity. Logically, you looking for logic to be able to solve any problem. In other words, and it says the day he stops thinking logically to how to solve a problem, that day it means he's no more being creative. So whatever problem you are going through, like we always say on this show, that you were born to solve a problem. You were born to solve a problem. Have you discovered the problem you were born to solve? And that is very important, because if you're going to make impact in your community, in your country, and on the continent where you live, you must identify a particular problem which you would give yourself to solve. Like our guest tonight, is just to look for real life problems and look at mathematical models to solve that problem. You see, he told us how he helped Aston Villa to win the match just by applying the logic and of probability and those kind of things. And I think it's wonderful. So creativity is you thinking of a problem in a different way and not looking at it in a different perspective and not necessarily, drawing conclusion. Like we say, for some people that have challenges, like we've had on this show, people who have gone through experiences of maybe depression and we're thinking of suicide, and we say suicide is not the solution. When you commit suicide, we're saying that the person is not thinking about to solve the problem, is using a permanent solution to solve a temporary problem. You see, it's using a permanent solution to solve a temporary problem. Because if you look at it in a different dimension, in a different perspective, it will see solution out of that problem that he or she is facing. Wow, quite very interesting. Now, take us again as a mathematician and things like that. Social aspects. How do you use mathematics, or what areas do you contribute to the community aside from my passion is corporate social responsibility? How are you living as a mathematician, corporately impacting the community that you are?
Okay, so one of the things that I do is that I go into schools. I work for a charity that goes into schools, and,
okay.
And I tell them about my career of being a mathematician, and also tell them about problems that I use mathematics today. Actually, you can see applications of real world mathematics, because one of the things that they say in school is saying, well, sine, cos, tan, algebra, we will never use this ever again. We'll never use this ever again. And so why are we studying this subject? And so me actually showing them real world mathematics, the mathematics that I do, and the mathematics that they could actually encounter, and problems out there that still needs to be resolved. So, for instance, when you're talking about things like climate change, where we see COVID-19 going all right, do you know, without mathematics is something that will, mathematical modelling is what we need actually to tackle those two global challenges. And those are things more, like, so for instance, and there are problems that we're still trying to resolve, like, say, for instance, the MH370, which was an airplane
that was lost.
Kuala Lumpur was heading off to Beijing, disappeared after 45 minutes. Nobody could find it. They sent all the assets to try and look for it. Nobody could find it. So what we have to do is that we have to develop mathematical modelling ways to say, okay, where do we think that where can we actually predict where that airplane has gone? Because at the end of the day, people have to find out where we can't leave that airplane to be disappeared, to be gone forever. We have to find out that plane again. That's an example of real world mathematics. So like, say, forest fires. How do you actually tackle forest fires? Is there a strategy? Do let's say mathematical modelling simulation. There's our good examples.
Wow. It's interesting that you're just looking at the applicability. I remember when I was in school, when I was in college, and then when somebody says he's studying statistics, I just think as if they are just jobless, I just think that, why would you go and study statistics? Why? Now, but with understanding and knowing fully well that everything is applicable. And this is one of the things I do even as a lecturer when I was lecturing, and I had opportunity to teach people to say that whatever you are taught is taught to ask the question, how is this applicable in the real world scenarios? So the day I picked my children from school and they said, oh, today they taught us longitude and latitude. And I told her, I said, so how do you think longitude and latitude is used in real life scenarios? How is it used? It is then you're going to appreciate what you were taught in the class. If you're able to look at, okay, how is going to help me? Like you rightly mentioned, most of us, when you think of school, what you teach in school, there's that thinking that is not going to be useful. They're just stuffing my head with stuff just for me to pass the exam. However, some of these things are not like that. Like you mentioned, the issue of mathematical modeling to help solve real life issues, and whatever we learn to know that they are applicable. But you mentioned examples, some of these examples. I would like us to tell us about the example of the Queen Elizabeth aircraft carrier.
Okay, right, here comes interesting. And again, this shows the poetry of the logical ideas, yeah? So I was getting a reputation of somebody who would solve real world problems. And one time, a Royal Navy captain approached me, and he says to me, goes, Nora, I said, we've heard that you're somebody that can solve real world problems. And I said, yep. He said, I am. And he says, well, we have a problem with a future ship. So it is very expensive to build, but it's actually unaffordable to run. And they said, is there a mathematical modeling way of you actually solving this problem? And I said, okay. And I said, let me think about it. And I said, okay, how about this? Have you ever heard the story Goldilocks and the Three Bears? And he said, excuse me. And I said, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. See, there's part of the story that goes like this. See, Goldilocks, she goes into the house, you see this porridge, she says, this is too hot, this is too cold, and this is just right. And then I said, that's how you solve your problem. Yeah. And then he looked at me, and then he walked away, and I didn't see him again for 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, he came back, and he said, Dara, would you like to follow me? So I said, yeah, I'll follow you. So I followed him, and I went into this room full of all important-looking gentlemen, you know.
Or generals, naval commanders.
Yeah, civil servants, important people, yeah?
Yeah.
And I said to them, I go, okay, so what's this meeting all about? And they said, oh, this meeting's all about us cancelling this future ship project. I said, okay. And they said, and we've heard that you come up with a possible solution. I said, yes, I have. And they said, would you like to tell us about it? I said, okay. Have you heard the story, Goldilocks and the Three Bears? And they said, I beg your pardon. I said, yeah, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You see, Goldilocks, she goes into the house, she sees this porridge, she says, this is too hot, this is too cold, or this is just right. That's how you solve the problem. There you go. And then they said to me, they says, do you realise that this project is of national interest and you're coming up with some sort of nursery rhyme? Well, they said it in a bit more aggressive. They were not happy. And I said, okay, wait. I said, okay, well, let me be a bit more specific, yeah? What you need to do with that ship is that you need to link its design to its cost, to its capability. What does that do? It creates a whole series of nonlinear mathematical equations. Then you write an algorithm, you put it in the computer, and then you say to that computer, okay, now design me a ship that's not too hot, not too cold, just right. And then what you will have is that you'll have a ship that is running cost is affordable.
Affordable. Interesting.
And then I showed them an example. I said, here's one I prepared earlier. And I looked at it and then I said, oh, we think that might just work. And so, so they did the investigation, and then they decided to cut the first deal. But that was that was over 10 years ago. But that ship now is called the HMS Queen Elizabeth, which is the largest aircraft carrier that the Royal Navy has ever had. And,
in the UK.
In the UK. And somewhere on that ship there's a placard, and it says Dr. Nora Chamberlain. So here we go.
Interesting. Wow. It's quite interesting in which the applicability of mathematics in some of those things, and how you were able to use a nursery rhyme. But I think it's not actually the nursery rhyme, actually. I think it's a mindset in which you, whatever it is that come at you, you don't see it as a problem. And I think that is where that is the first challenge that the teachers did. The problem that the teachers created for us, people, for students, when you want to teach them mathematics and you call it a problem, it's already negative. It's already negative. If you call it a sum, maybe that is better. And I'm talking of this from the Professor. I don't know if you know Professor Imafidon, the brightest family in Britain, in which he doesn't call mathematics a problem. They call it sums, or they call it games, or they call it challenge, and that changes and removes the negative and the fear that, oh, they want to give me a problem and I want to solve, and they say, okay, this is more problem for you to solve, more problem to solve. It's negative, and that negative connotation creates a block in our minds, in which when it comes to the issue of adding 1 + 1, we just block out. And perhaps that might be a challenge. But it's very interesting that you've been able to do that. Now, let's ask the question, have you ever faced a challenge in life? And how did you solve it?
Have I faced a challenge in life?
Yes.
I suppose the biggest challenge that I face in life. I mean, you mean in terms of trying to solve it using mathematics?
Well, anyhow, at least a challenge that is any human being, because any human being face challenges. People face challenges. How did you overcome?
Right. Okay. So all right. So I was visiting fellow at Loughborough University. I was supervising an MSc student, and the project that we was doing on was minimizing the probability of an artificial intelligence takeover. Yeah.
Okay.
And we created all of these mathematical modeling simulation, and we were throwing in all these strategies. And what we found was 80% of the time AI would take over. Yeah. There was 80% of the time AI would take over. Every single strategy that we threw at it, we couldn't solve. Yeah. It didn't make a difference. And we knew that the come at the end of the MSc was going to go to a conference and we was going to present, and all we was going to do was saying, well, this is the problem, this is how we went about it. 80% of the time AI will take over. We tried all of these strategies and none of them is successful. That's it, and that's what we're doing. All good. Yeah, fair enough. And then a week later, 1 week before the conference, my student got in contact with me and says, Naira, I said, hello. And he goes, they've changed the name of our talk. I said, well, what did they change it to? They said, instead of it being the mathematics to minimize the probability of artificial intelligence, I said, yeah. I said, they've changed it to the mathematics that can stop an AI apocalypse. No, wait a minute. So they want me to stand up in front of 500 people with the title of my talk, "The Mathematics to Stop an AI Apocalypse," when we were not successful. We're not successful. You know what I mean? So yeah. So I had 1 week to come up with a way to stop an AI apocalypse.
And what would you say is an apocalypse? Is it an apocalypse? Is that not is it the demise of AI or extinction of AI or taking over of AI?
It means that AI is taking over, and now that it's now making decisions which is damaging to
human beings.
Yeah. So basically, we're not talking about robots walking down the street shooting guns or anything like that. But what's the simulation that was doing is that where important decision making has now been handed over to AI. So the AI has now become the government, and now the AI is making decisions on who are and are not the winners, and it's to the detriment to the human race. So do we get to that state? So I only had, let's say, for instance, 1 week to try and come up with a strategy to stop that process of AI takeover, AI apocalypse. And then I was one day I was watching the news, and I was watching the news, and it was talking about Obamacare over in the United States.
Okay.
In Obamacare,
Obamacare.
if you want healthcare, you need insurance. Now, if you're well off, fair enough. You're not so well off, it's much more challenging. Now, what Obamacare says is, if we can actually increase the premium for those who are well off, so it could actually subsidise those who are not so well off. And the opponents of Obamacare says, well, isn't this the modern day Robin Hood? You know, you take
from the rich, and you
to give to the poor.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking,
you take from the rich and you give to the poor.
take from the rich, give to the poor. And then I said, well, that's interesting. I'm wondering if I could write almost like an anti-AI that targets AI businesses. If they get beyond a certain threshold, what it will do, it'll target these businesses and takes its resources and give it to the human businesses. And I'm wondering, would this anti-AI, I'm wondering would that actually work? And so we wrote the algorithm, we did the simulation, and what happened was it reduced an AI takeover from 80% down to 3%. So I could stand up and said, right, the mathematics to stop an AI apocalypse is called the Obama Hood.
Not really, not be hood, but Obama hood.
Obama Hood, the mixture of Obamacare and Robin Hood, we call the Obama Hood an anti-AI. And there we go. So we managed to do a simulation that reduced the AI apocalypse from 80% down to 3%.
3%.
There you go.
Interesting. Wow. Now, ladies and gentlemen, one of the key things I learned from what our guest is saying, and which I think we need to apply tonight, is that most of us, we watch information, we watch news, we watch films, you listen to music, you read books, or you read comics, or you do something, and some of these things we just read it on their face value. We don't look at what knowledge can I glean from it and apply to real life situation, which is what our guest just did. Because just watching news and looking at Obamacare and understanding a different context and say, okay, what if I use that same concept in this context? How would it work? And perhaps in solving life issues, it's like that, in which you take something from a different context, you bring it into a different context, and you might get a solution to some of the problems that actually we are having as people and as human beings. So our guest has told us tonight about the fact that his ability to look at, he got a problem in which he was trying to just throw in the towel to say, well, I don't know how to solve this problem. But because of a change in perspective, just the change in the title of the project gave, at least a new perspective, so to speak, to say, okay, let's look at it from a different perspective. And now they were able to solve that problem. Wow. What a wonderful. I'm just still thinking of what can AI, I'm a pastor, can mathematical modeling predict my sermon on Sunday?
Could it predict your sermon on Sunday? I would have to think about that.
You have to
It's have to think about that. I mean, sometimes, let me think about it. I don't have to think about that. I want to give it straight. I want to give it straight answer. I mean, it would, I don't know whether people will be comfortable when you write a mathematical algorithm and say, I'm going to preach on Sunday. You press the button, and there's your sermon. You want to think that it's come from,
It's come from somewhere. But you know something. In this space of while I was doing my PhD, I came in contact with it's called Parsin, Parsin. You know what Parsin is? In which they use AI to write letters, to pick letters, to pick words, and to write very congruent and very, you would think it's a human being that wrote the letter, but actually it's an AI that jumble, bring words together and write a letter to him. And so I think sometimes when you think of these possibilities, it's very scary. What?
Yeah, I think, yes, I mean, this was right. In terms of what you said, it is possible, but I don't think your congregation will be too happy to think that you're doing a sermon and you press the button and the AI comes up and says,
the challenge.
they would want it to be, you want to be, inspired. The Lord drops a word.
The challenge with that is the fact that it will just come with letters and there will not be inspiration and there will not be impact. It will not be transformational in the lives of those who are listening to it, because it's just mumbo jumbo of various things put together. And
well, I mean, singers, they say that with an AI, they've got some AI that can actually write music, yes. But but the thing that I would have to challenge, I would think about it. The thing that I would challenge is that an AI or machine learning uses data and information from the past. You know what I mean? So it'd be using some of these things from the past and saying, okay, let's pick up things there, and themes there, and then henceforth here is a sermon. While with you would have to say, okay, I received a word from the word for this very situation, and also this is the case of something that's happening there in the congregation, and they're all suddenly saying, what I've prepared, I've now stopped now. The AI cannot do that, and then you press the button, it's there, and it will be you. I feel it'll be like you reading out a speech. I will now read out this speech as opposed to you're reading the word, you've got the Bible, you're reading the word, and then you're preaching on it. But if you're doing if you had like an AI, you'd be like, even if you memorize it, it will feel like you're reading out a speech. So I think,
so in other words, AI is still deficient to equate human intelligence.
Yeah,
is still deficient to equate human intelligence. In as much as it could help solve some problems, it could help tackle some challenges, but it's still inefficient because of the issue of having emotions, of having of those kind of things.
I think it's getting. I mean, there's people that are saying that it can be creative, and I've seen AI come up with a classical musical piece, and then some people find it difficult saying, was this written by a machine or was this written by a person? But I think when it comes to church sermon,
it cannot come to church.
That is dropped down from the Lord.
Yeah, excellent. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's been a wonderful time. We've been on for just about an hour, and it's been marvelous, learning the applicability of some of the things we learn in school. And I think from this, as an academic and somebody who is passionate about teaching, is that whatever we learn in school, if you need to go back to school, look at it from a different perspective. Learn from those things and see how you can apply them in different contexts to solve problems. Comment, somebody says, wow, what a wonderful evening. Thank you so much. Quite a lot of very true, very interesting. So thank you everybody who has been here tonight, and we want to thank Dr. Chamberlain for creating time to be with us tonight, to inspire us, because we've learned, perhaps for all of us who are on live tonight and those who will be watching the replay of this, you'll begin to look at life problems in a different perspective and see, it means I don't have appropriate strategies to tackle this problem, and know where to go get those strategies and where to go get those modelings, what you can call models, to be able to solve those problems. So I pray that as we take this on, I hope we've been inspired. I hope we've been able to overcome every limiting belief. There's nothing, like we said in the initial, at the beginning, there's nothing you cannot achieve. You don't need, like our guest told us, you don't need anybody's permission to be whoever you want to be. In as much as what you want to be is a positive thing, not a negative thing. You don't need anybody's permission. In as much as it's a positive thing and not negative, you don't need anybody's permission, irrespective of your age. Just again, buttress, I saw the other day a lady who was how many years old? Is it 60 something, getting her first degree? So you don't need anybody's permission. If you want to attain anything, you can attain anything, irrespective of the challenge. It's like I said, know the price you need to pay. If you don't have what it takes to get the price, look for people around that could help you, supporters that could help you to pay that price, and you will be able to achieve what you want to achieve. So thank you everybody who has been on the show tonight. Thank you, Dr. Nira, who's been with us tonight. It's been great having you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have next week, God willing, next week Tuesday, we have a wonderful guest coming all the way from the United States of America. Our guest, God willing, on Tuesday is an award-winning musician. You can check her up online, Mrs. Doctor. She's actually also a doctor. She's an academician, but also a musician, Dr. Angela Moss-Poole. Dr. Angela Moss-Poole. She'll be with us all the way from the United States of America, Florida, so next week. So please make it a date with us as we go again, deep dive, learning from the life of these wonderful and great people and helping us to go to the next level. You can be the next person that will make positive impact in your community, in your country, and on your continent, if only you decide that nobody needs to give you permission to be that person. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Dorothy Bassi. Thank you, Dr. Nira. All right, cheers, everybody. See you next week with Dr. Angela Moss-Poole. Bye, everybody. Bye. Bye. Bye.